Hello everyone, today we are taking a look at the OddityRC XI20 Pro. This one has the O3 camera and VTX from DJI, so I'll be using my goggles too, but they also have an analog version of this available, and the canopy is slightly different. That allows you to mount an external HD camera. It has a special little mount up front. This also comes in two different varieties of ExpressLRS. We have 2.4 gigahertz and the 900 megahertz, as well as TBS Crossfire as another receiver protocol option. As you can see, the props are facing down, so this is a pusher configuration. It's got Spinny Boy motors, and they are 1205 5500 kV. You'll find the pictures on the OddityRC website have 5-bladed props, but they do note that with 5-bladed props, you may see jello from the DJI O3, so 5-bladed props is recommended for the analog version. The flight controller is the OddityRC F7. It's a 40 amp ESC. It has USB-C, and you also note that it has heat sinks on both sides, as well as the specifications printed right here on the back. And I thought the silk screening on this was actually pretty dang good. The receiver goes right in that 3D printed holster right back here near the rear standoff. The battery mat isn't sticky, but it seems to hold well. And of course, the battery runs sideways, so it's what I call toilet tanking. Off the flight controller, we do have a capacitor right down there. We've got a 3D printed mount for our receiver antenna, as well as this piece right up here for our DJI O3 or your analog VTX antenna. Down here at the bottom, where we have access to our SD card as well as our USB-C port for our DJI O3 activation. This bit down in here is plastic, but we have a carbon fiber plate here on the bottom. And to protect those screws on that bottom carbon fiber plate, we do have a foam pad, but I haven't applied it yet. We do get an extra battery mat, extra sets of screws, an extra set of props, an extra prop protection, and one sheet of stickers. On my scale, it weighs 144 grams. In the slow cruisy flight, I did use this 850 milliamp 4S battery from Beta FPV, but they recommend Cotter batteries. And with that 850 milliamp battery, that will get you almost 7 minutes of flight. It weighs just under 240 grams. I used this GNB 650 4S battery in the faster flight. It also tested the slower flight. Slower flight, I get 4 minutes and about 30 seconds. Faster flight, just about 3 minutes. And with that battery, it weighs 214 grams. Motor post to motor post, I'm getting about 95 millimeters. The carbon fiber looks to be at least 2 millimeters thick. The piece on the bottom is covered up by that plastic molding, so I'm not certain how thick that is. I'd have to guess 1.5 millimeters thick. In this first flight, we're going to start off with our faster flight, my kind of favorite style of flying. Although, you know, if you're looking for one of these and you like to do exploratory flying, cruising, just about any sort of flight style you want, OddityRC's CineWhoops are pretty capable, as you see there. I'm going to come in a little bit flat there, and we had a little bit of oscillation. But also pay attention when I kind of loop over this tree at the end of the house along the fence line, that it doesn't have those same sort of oscillations. So I have to blame either my throttle management when I brought that up, or the angle at which I came in flat. That's why in a lot of these videos I talk about the technique in coming in, because it's different on different quads. Some quads you can almost not bring out any oscillations. This particular one, we've got a 2-inch prop. It's 4-bladed, but it's still a 2-inch prop, and we're running, 140 some grams of dry weight, and then we have our battery weight on top of that. So for a 2-inch quad, it's carrying quite a bit of weight, but it's really quite capable. OddityRC, if you're not familiar with them, they are a company that has kind of made their name in the East, and they don't have any resellers like through the US, going through Get FPV, Race Day Quads, Pyro Drone, any of our normal FPV shops. They don't have any reselling channels through those. So if you want to get one of these, we have to go directly through OddityRC's website. So I'll put a link down in the video description if you are interested in them. I do have their 2.5-inch version, but it doesn't look like I'm going to get that done, all my flying done on that one before I go on vacation, which is coming up fairly quickly. Also, we got snow today, so I have, between the rain on Christmas and the snow now, yeah, I'm kind of shut out when it comes to flying here. Probably until I get back from vacation. I do have one other quad that's pretty much ready to go as far as all the flying that I typically do on them. And again, I should restate that in these winter months, I don't fly as much for two reasons. You know, we don't have great weather all the time this time of year, as well as it being cold, and that can limit it, and as well as just not as much daylight. You know, we don't have the sun nice and bright in the morning, so I can't really fly before I go to work. It's dark when I go to work. And then I'm limited on my fly time to be pretty much my lunch breaks from work, as well as on the weekend. So that's where I have to pile in all sorts of flights. But OddityRC quads, they always have a certain sort of feel to them, and they always fly very, very well. They specialize in prop protected quads, so if you're looking for something from them without prop protection, to date I haven't seen anything yet. But you know, I have enjoyed the OddityRC quads when I've flown them. And I had that one that was a 6S. It was actually one of the very few 6S quads that I had on the channel. I believe it's the 35 Pro, the XI20 Pro, and that flew incredibly well. This one flies very, very well as well. I just was not as surprised about how well this flew, probably because I'd already flown one of their quads and had come to expect that from them. Okay, our flight has ended, as I said, just a touch over 3 minutes of flight, and our battery is coming back up in voltage. We get to 14 volts, or if you go by average cell, 3.51 now. This is our slower flight, and this is on a 650 milliamp battery. As I said, I did test a number of different 850s, and on average, 6.5 minutes to nearing 7 minutes of flight on an 850. So if you've got the O3 version and you want to know how long you fly in this sort of style, that should give you some sort of idea. Of course, our battery care, battery quality, it's all part of that formula as to calculating how much flight time you'll get, but hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea based upon a number of different brands of batteries and ages of batteries that I have in that 850, as well as the 650. I flew the 650 quite a bit just because I prefer to stay a little bit lighter. That's the micro bias in me. Also, I think the analog one will have a different sound to it if it's using the 5-bladed props. That's one of the things about the pitch that we hear from the propellers. The more blades we get, it might not be audibly less noisy, but it sounds less noisy to the ear. I have talked to a few people about maybe using a cell phone in order to get some sort of audible measurement. I haven't quite worked out how I would do that in flight. I guess I would have a camera pointed at a cell phone, also pointed at the quad, because I do use a flight camera in order to get us flight audio, and I put that in the edits so that you can hear what it sounds like as it moves across my spaces. So I think that's what I could do. I just got to figure out what is most likely going to be the most reliable. Also note, we get a little bit of the prop protection in view. If you look down in the lower left and lower right corners with the camera angle down low, which is probably somewhere around 5 or maybe 8 degrees, we do get a little bit of prop protection. So if you wanted to get a clean view, you probably have to crop in and you're editing a little bit. At least on the DJI O3 version. Of course, the analog version is going to have a different view, but I would highly encourage you to check out the OddityRC website in order to figure out which camera they have there, and maybe look at other videos online to see the field of view on that camera and how it appears, to make sure it's, you know, something that you would enjoy being in the goggles and looking through, so to speak. I don't think we have to play the entire 4.5 minutes. We've seen about half of it. Let's go ahead and move towards the end so that you can look at the landing voltage. You can see here as we get down to 4.42, 4.43, it drops fairly quickly, so I have to hustle home and I have to do a quick abbreviated landing. So we're going to have a little bonk here on the ground as we dip clear down into the 3.3s average cell, but it bounced back. That's part of me using a smaller battery. It might have been a battery that has been discharged a little bit too deep of time or two as well, but that should give you an idea about the flight time on a 650 milliamp battery, as well as the aforementioned 850s. This is kind of a clean look at the prop protection that we've got here, and I don't know if they're first, but I think I may have mentioned it, that they were kind of one of the companies that switched materials, and I think this design that they've used has actually come through in a number of different quads, probably since they gained popularity in their home country and where a lot of our manufacturers are. this probably caught fire after they started making it popular. It does have little feet here on the edge, but in our particular case, because of the 03, doesn't come to play. We actually land on this bottom plate. That's just the nature of having the 03. I suspect the analog version isn't nearly as deep, and therefore we land out here on the prop protection's feet instead of, on some sort of base plate. I suspect the base plate is just up higher, flush against here, so we would actually probably land on those feet. But even kind of twisting it, it's not nearly as flexible as I would expect. Of course, we've got nothing attached to it, so I've got free reign of just kind of twisting it all about here. But I don't think that's something I've highlighted before. Also note, it's just so you know, like when you get it, this is how they come. They notch those out for their own purposes, probably for the camera mount in order to kind of secure down in there so that you have a secure footing for the camera to be sitting on rather than it floating above the top, because I've seen that in some of my own builds where if you don't have your mount down, even with an analog camera, sometimes you'll get some vibrations or something in your image if the camera isn't sitting flush and flat. So it's a good mounting surface, and it probably has some, as you can see here we go, let's just look at it here a bit. We've got some of the print that goes down in there, and that gives us some clearance for the camera as well. As you can tell, it's a little bit dirty. Yeah, I had some crashes and whatnot. Nothing really marked to call home about or anything. I didn't smack into a post or a tree going plat or anything like that. But as in the case with my experience so far with OddityRC products, I find them to be very durable, very reliable. And quite honestly, I think this might be their first all-in-one that they made. And we just don't see this a whole lot. There might be other companies doing this, but in the micro realm and my realm, I don't see all-in-one flight controllers like this. Of course, it doesn't have a VTX or a receiver built into it, but for a flight controller, yeah, it's got all the UARTs. So if you wanted to add GPS to it, you could add GPS as well as you've got UARTs for your 03 or other video system if you're looking to build. And then you've got, I already mentioned your receiver and then your GPS all right here. And the silk screening is quite nice. And these pads come along the edge for your motors. So you can take your motor wire and you can slot it down in there, and then you can secure it, of course, after you tin the pad and tin your motor wire, slide it down in there, put some heat against the wire, and it should melt right into that little notch, giving you a nice, good connection. But I thought I would highlight that because I know I have some builders that do come to the channel and they look to build these instead of buying bind and flies just because they like part of the process. So you might want to check out this flight controller. It seems pretty solid, and it seems like something that they've spent some time on. I shouldn't forget to mention the plug over here on the side. I don't really have a lot to say about the construction or the design. It's all pretty solid. I don't have anything to call out that's excessively negative. I think for most people, it's going to come down to it being a 4S 2-incher. I had that chart previously, and you're probably wondering where in the chart this would go. The Flylens 85 is still my favorite just because it's so light and so nimble. But this is going to handle more wind in the faster flight as well as the cruisy flight. I had winds over 10 miles an hour. Matter of fact, if you go back and watch the slow flight as I take off and I just clear the cement pad, you'll see some leaves blowing across the lawn. That's an indicator of, the winds and getting down to that ground area. This is going to handle winds far better than those lighter 2-inch 2Sers, and I would put it near the top of my list. In the moment, I would say it's either number 2 or number 2.5 as far as my enjoyment when flying it, because OddityRC seemingly, to me, makes a quality product, and they always fly very well in aggressive style that I enjoy. So that's something that you have to decide, is it important, or are you just looking for flat sort of cruisy sort of flying, whether it's cinematic or just exploratory, whatever you like to enjoy. But for me, on the 2-inch CineWhoops, that table I made, I would put it at number 2 or maybe 2.5. So fairly close. And as I mentioned previously, they're only going to ship out of China. So depending upon where you're at, check their shipping policies, check their order processing. I'll have a link down in the video description to where you can go over and look at this product. And I do have the XI20 Pro, but I'm going to have to wait a few more days to do some more flying with this because I focused mainly on the 20 or the 2-inch version. The 2.5-inch version, I've flown some but I haven't completed all my flying yet. And this one's designed for more classic sort of cinematic sort of flying. It's got a mount right there on the top to where you can put your external HD camera if you want to put a GoPro or something like that on top. But if you're looking for something a bit larger, I have confidence in what I've flown so far with this, that it will fly well as well. But if you want to wait on the review, I can appreciate that. But if you do have any comments, questions, or suggestions about the XI20 Pro from OddityRC, please let me know in the comments section below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.